And so welcome. Today I'm going to be working on a sculpture that I started. This is my third stream working on it. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask those. I'll try to keep an eye out for those, but I might miss it, especially on Instagram, where it just loses the questions pretty fast. Somebody says, big fan, sir. Well, thank you. Thank you over on Instagram. So I'm using Chavant NSP medium clay for these sculptures, these studies. And today I'm just going to continue working on the details. We might get into the portrait or something like that, but primarily working on starting to consider things like anatomy and hopefully get some progress on these forms. And somebody's saying how to grow as an artist. Well, what I did was I decided that I would post on Instagram, for example. I decided a while ago that I would post daily, and I was pretty consistent with that for a while. And the only reason that I stopped doing that is because Instagram then deleted my account. Well, it deleted my account and then it reinstated it almost instantly the same day. So that was like a wake-up call that I was like, wait a minute, like all of this work that I've been doing basically as a part-time job could just be gone in seconds if somebody on Instagram just says, so you're gone. But then my once I built my Instagram to about 90,000, I think I was almost at 90,000, just a couple hundred short of 90,000. Then it was hacked. You know, I was scammed through an email that looked legitimate and said, "Oh, there's this, you've qualified for Instagram verified or something like that," and then it was a scam. So, usually I catch those, but all it takes is one time where I was on my phone and I couldn't see that the email didn't have the logo on, or the right logo wasn't from the right address. It was just off by a few characters, and then they took it and they said it would cost like $1,000 or $1,500, something like that, to get my account back. And I just said, I'm not paying you guys anything. So I had to start all over. And now I'm at about 15,000 followers on Instagram. That's after starting over from zero from the first thing. So I'd say like the main thing is consistency. Also making sure that the content is good. If you're consistently posting artwork that's not very good, then that's not as helpful. Though consistency is helpful no matter what, but it's not as helpful as if you're actually trying to be either entertaining or informative, and your artwork is actually something that people can admire and be like, oh wow, that's a cool thing. That's a cool work of art. So always be improving and be consistent with posting is my main suggestion for anybody that's interested in growing. Let me make sure that I'm in focus. I've had times where I wasn't in focus the whole time. I recorded the whole thing and then I was out of focus. Do you guys have a Discord server for sculpting? It's not something that I have yet, though I'm thinking about it. So I wanted to do something through Gumroad, like a subscription type monthly subscription thing for a little bit to get people that were interested in sculpting, and I wanted some things to offer. And so if I was to do that and create a Discord, like what are things that you guys would be interested in that would be worth maybe you know, $10-15 a month to be a part of. If you have suggestions, please let me know, because that's something I am interested in and I'd like to consider doing, especially if I can, you know, add just a little bit more value to people that are serious, or people that maybe you got the courses but you've had trouble finding the motivation to actually do the assignments and things like that. And so if a Discord server would help with that, then maybe I could look into getting that. But I'm just trying to do my best to grow and help others do the same. Grow and improve. Okay, so I'm trying to follow the outlines, and then now I can start thinking about the anatomy and establishing that a little bit more clearly. To do that, I'm gonna, let's see, here in the back area there would be a, let's draw a center line to make sure that we're not losing symmetry as we do this. The pose is fairly symmetrical through the torso, and I've chosen to change the symmetry of the arms because I thought offsetting the arms was going to be a little bit more interesting from the side view. Just as a design choice, I chose to do that. And then right here there would be the spine would come in the small of the back. There would be a little bit more negative space in there. Are there any masters you recommend to master copy? Let's see. Yeah, there's I really like the book Modeling and Sculpting the Human Figure by Edward Lanterry, and there's some drawings on the process of doing some demo sculptures of the figure as well as the facial features. And so I think a master study from that book, or a series of master studies from those books, could be very valuable. And then I just think if you can, if you're able to go to a museum or something nearby where they have sculptors or sculptures that you admire that you think were well done, then just using those as master studies, I think, is a good way to just kind of bring that knowledge into your own repertoire, into your own skill set, And so maybe bringing a small maquette, maybe this size or even smaller, you could do something small like this guy back here, bringing some clay and then sitting in a museum and sculpting, doing a sculpture study directly from reference, a sculptor that you admire or that you think was well done, and just try to copy it as best you can. And I think that's a great thing to try to do. You also might look online. Sometimes they have like master copies that have been shrunk down and 3D printed or cast in some way, and they're of actual sculptures like David or other famous sculptures. I don't know if they have one of Bernini's David, but I really like that one. And then just the same thing, just copying it as best you can, trying to learn from the way those sculptors that you admire treated the forms and treated the figure. I think that's a great thing to try to do. Can Greek sculpture be a good example? Yeah, there's a bunch of ancient Greek sculptures that are very well done and very masterful, and they are very interesting. So I would just choose a sculpture. I mean, if you have a museum nearby that have some of your favorite sculptures, that's like ideal. But if you can't do that, then getting as many photographs as you can and trying to do it from photographs. But I mean, working from photographs is not as good as working from life. So I try to work from direct observation if at all possible. So he says, yeah, there are tons of sculptures and 3D scans. I was thinking of opening them in Blender as a reference. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, it's still, still be better if you had like a physical, something that you could physically move around and see in space. There's something about that's a little bit more beneficial than on a screen. But if all you have is a screen and it gives you access to some of the best works of art that have ever been created, and then you can copy those, I think that's a great thing to try to study. I need to decide what's happening with the drapery. With this, I guess we'll give it say that this is covered. Keep it modest for social media, or at least relatively modest. It's still like a swimsuit, but say that's the swimsuit. Hello, I'm currently a 3D character artist working in game production. I'm planning to do the same as my hobby. To do this as my hobby, I just wanted to ask how many years you've dedicated to sculpting and what inspired you to start this journey. So I've been sculpting for about 8 years, and I got into it because I took a sculpting class in college and I just liked it. I just enjoyed it too much, and just decided, you know what, I just want to try to make this work, try to make this artist thing work. And so that's kind of, I've always liked drawing and painting. I've done a little bit of painting, but drawing has always been something that I've been interested in, especially people. I'm interested in people. That's what I feel like is the most interesting thing to represent. So that was always something that I just had. Like, there are some things that you don't have to force yourself to be interested in. You're just, for one reason or another, you're just interested in those things, and you find them to be engaging and worthwhile to study and learn about. And for me, that was, art and figurative art. And after college, I tried to I made my sculpting courses, the figure sculpting fundamentals course. I started while I was in college and then finished it. And that was like 2 years of work, of part-time work to create that and release that. So it was a lot of work up front before I was able to get any money from what I've been doing. It was like it was like working a part-time job or writing a book for 2.5 years. It was a lot of work before it was released to the public and before I could make any money from the sales. And so then, once that course was out, then I was able to build other courses, and I'm trying to continually, build my my library of things, resources that I can market, that I can sell. So there's my ebooks and artist X-ray vision. So there's one on the male figure and the female figure. So there's ways that you can monetize nowadays. There's ways that you can figure out how to create, whether it's digital products, informational products, courses, actual physical artworks, or if you're working digital, maybe you're making digital sculptures. There's ways to do those and ways to price them, to make them accessible to people. But it's not, as I've said before, it's not the easiest thing. So making money as an artist is difficult because making money creatively as a creative person is difficult. But that's kind of been my journey. I browsed your channel and wanted to say how impressed I am at your work. Your tutorials and tips have been incredibly helpful and inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing. Truly appreciated. Well, I'm glad to hear it. That's great to hear. And that's what I hope, that there will be people that are trying to learn and that they find those resources and find them helpful and worthwhile. And so I appreciate that. Let's see this. So the gluteus maximus, the muscle itself travels quite a bit. It doesn't follow the form of the buttock as much as it travels kind of up and back, and that causes this to be quite soft. If you look at the reference, there's very little indication of the transition between the glute and the upper part of the back of the leg. There's very little indication of that transition, but it's there. So you have to think about, okay, well then what's happening? What's happening back here on this backside with the anatomy and everything. And that's kind of the difficulty, as well as the challenge and the fun part of these studies, is taking a reference from one angle and then inventing whatever's happening from every other angle. What's your experience with doing crochets? I feel like sculpting is probably the best way to learn anatomy, even if you draw or paint. Yeah, I would agree. And in fact, there's many drawing programs that require sculpting crochets just because you are able to understand the muscle so much better if you build it in space and build it from the insertion points to the what is it? It's the insertion and the um, oh, I forget, but you know, the place where the muscle begins and ends, you know those, and it's just easier to understand those when you're working in 3D. And so that's a course that might be, that might be my next course. I've done a course on the figure, the full figure, and kind of the fundamentals, and then on portraiture and on the hands and with the hand course and the portrait course, I've gone a little bit into the anatomy and done some studies, but I haven't gone to the full crochet. So that might be the next course that I produce, though it probably won't be a little while. I need a little break from the editing that's kind of intense that comes with making an online course. But it's a great thing if you can have an crochet. I actually have a model that I purchased online that's just somebody else's sculpture of an crochet. But I do want to do a more in-depth look at the crochet and the study of the bones and muscles of the body from that sculptor's point of view. Traditional sculptors are becoming rare these days, and truly hope that the new generations will continue this awesome craft. Yeah, that's why I'm doing this, is to try to pass on some of the knowledge from past masters in a way that is that's accessible. Somebody on Instagram is asking what's the name of this clay. This is Chavant NSP Medium Clay. Chavant with CH, Chavant NSP Medium Clay. It's a non-dry modeling clay. But yeah, it is kind of it's an old art. But I do think there's a turning back towards tradition. We've got these digital resources and tools and everything, and that's great. But I do think that there's going to be kind of a turning back towards traditional forms of art, especially as AI takes over. We're going to say, you know what, that's nice and all, but there's something about physically moving the clay with your hands, or maybe it'll just be that more people get into these traditional things, even if they're not creating what we would consider masterful works, that they're just creating because AI allows them to have AI allows for learning about those things and the study of it, and so yeah, it's an interesting time that we're living in. And we'll have to see how it develops. But I'm hoping that there's always going to be a place for these traditional things like drawing, like oil painting, like sculpting. That there's always going to be some interest, even though it does become a niche thing. But it's always a niche thing, It's always a small percentage of the population that's creative and interested in these types of things. So he says it's looking very nice. Thank you. Appreciate it. What advice would you give someone interested in pursuing traditional sculpting today? I would, if you can, I would try to get in contact with somebody that is successful as a sculptor, and then go and work for them for free. Just do it as a internship. Like, just say, hey, I'll do all the stuff you don't want to do around the studio. Just let me be in that environment and apprentice from you. I think that's a lot more valuable than getting a degree or anything like that. And then studying on your own, learning on your own as much as you can from stuff like the YouTube videos on the Proco 3D channel, my online courses, things like that. But try to study from people that you're interested in, um, that you like their style and their skill level. But if you can, if you can go and study for a couple months with somebody that's a professional doing what you want to do, so maybe they're bronze, maybe they work in bronze, or maybe they are working in the movie industry as a sculptor or something like that, and then you go shadow them and try to learn as much as you can from them. I think that's going to be more valuable because they'll have, not only will you build a connection, with an actual person, but they'll have maybe other connections, and they'll be able to give you specific advice that I can't even give, because most of my income is from online courses. And so if you want to learn about making a good online course for artists, then that's something that maybe I can help with. But other than that, I haven't dedicated the time and energy to learn how to make money solely on the sale of artworks, though that's something that I'm trying to learn about and get better at. How much do you sell each piece of art like this? Well, if it's a commission that somebody wants, that let's say they have a photo reference similar to this, and they say, I want you to sculpt this pose about this size. Let's say they want it in a polymer clay, or a what's it called, epoxy clay or something like that's a final finished product. Then those commissions start at $1,000. So I try not to take any commission for less than $1,000. And something like this, if it was fairly, let's say it's a finished sculpture about this size, yeah, that I would probably say about $1,000 for this, if it's the original, and if I can do it in a clay like polymer clay or epoxy clay. If there's mold making involved, or if they want it cast in bronze, then the price just goes up from there, and it can get pretty pricey, because those are expensive processes, and require hiring out to other companies or other individuals, and so that's all has to be taken into account. So yeah, let's see. Somebody's saying it's concerning to see how AI is impacting various industries, leading to numerous layoffs in the gaming industry. Yeah, that's part of technology. There's people that the technology helps. Those are the people that are able to get cheaper, whatever it is, cheaper video games, because a lot of the jobs able are able to be done by AI. And then there's the people that it hurts. But ironically, with AI, it's going to hurt a lot of like white collar type jobs, more than traditional blue collar jobs, because it's going to be really good at things like pattern recognition. Something that comes to mind is like in the medical field, like reading X-rays and stuff like that. It's getting to a point where AI is better at those types of things than the average technician. So those types of jobs are going to be under threat. But then also, storyboard designers and people that are at the beginning stage, they're also going to be challenged to be able to justify their extra cost. Instead of paying $10 for something, you have to justify charging a couple thousand or whatever it is. So there is, it's going to be tricky. We'll see how we navigate it. And the moral question of, well, is it okay for AI to take this art and copy it in this way, because the artists that made it are not receiving any benefit from the learning that they participated in by just having their images uploaded online. And so they're basically teaching the AI, but they don't get any benefit out of it. So there's kind of that moral, legal question that's difficult to answer. And it's going to be interesting how we navigate it. There's been self-playing pianos for like 100 years. There are still piano players. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, a good counterpoint. That there's always been, when they came up with photography, they thought, oh, well, no need for painters now, but we still have painters, and there's still been many great painters. So it hasn't wiped out the industry entirely. Though you could argue that it's made the industry smaller or more niche. But at the same time, I think it's hard to argue that there's ever been a time that's been easier to be an artist, because you have so much reach, there's so many tools, there's so much education out there to become a good artist, and there's so many ways to sell your art that just weren't available in the past. They just weren't an option. So I think even though there's new challenges, we also have to realize that there's always been challenges, and life was a lot rougher 100 years ago. I wouldn't want to switch places, because you had to work a lot harder to survive back then, and the things we have now are nice, but it comes with drawbacks. So hi, good morning. Hello. I was searching how to make an oil-based clay at home, and one of the recipes includes ball clay, which is rare to find in my country. So I was wondering, is there anything that I can replace it with? I believe, I'm not positive about this, but I believe you can sift, if you get like a sieve, a fine sieve, to be able to get rid of any aggregates. I believe that you can use natural clay that you can find just like by a riverbed or any area where the ground cracks. As it dries, it kind of cracks in that way that you see like in the desert. You see that's usually a sign that there's clay there. And so you can dig that up, and then you can sieve through it to get it nice and fine, so that you don't have any large aggregates as part of the clay, because you don't really need that. And then I think you can use that as a natural clay body. I'm not positive, and I haven't made my own clay successfully. I've tried some recipes that didn't turn out, and so if I find a recipe, or if you find a recipe, please reach out that works, because I would like to share that with everybody. I think that's a valuable thing, and I like the oil-based clays because they don't, they give you some time before it dries and sets up. Let's see. Can a talented guy make a living by this art? Well, I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure that out. This is what I do. So, and I have. And we just moved in, 2 years ago, we just moved into our first home. I have 4 kids, and this is the primary way that I provide for the family, mostly by selling my online courses on sculpting. So that's an open question, but I'm trying to make the answer to that question yes, that somebody can survive doing it. Though the road that I'm taking is probably not the road everybody will take, so take it with a grain of salt, because not everybody's interested in teaching an online course, and that's how I've chosen to go about surviving as an artist and making a living as an artist. Have you ever used a plastic bag for detailing and smoothing? I have. In fact, that's in one of the demos for texturing on the Proco 3D channel. So it shows that you can take a plastic bag and lay it over the surface and then draw in, and it softens the things like wrinkles and stuff in a way that feels pretty organic. But generally, my own preference, not a huge fan of the texturing part of the texturing stage, the last stage of the sculpting process. I like what I call a loosely, like a lightly textured sculpture. So, or a lightly tooled texture where you can still see the tool marks and it's not perfectly smooth, but it looks good because all the forms are in place. That's just my personal style and what I like. But if you're interested in like super realistic human, like prosthetic level details with veins and stuff like that, there's a lot of texturing techniques that you have to learn to implement as you're texturing. But texturing is just not my favorite part. My favorite part is finding the form. So I've chosen to not include that as a primary part of my my style as an artist. But I have done it. I have, tried it. Creating is living. Yeah, yeah. Creating is living. Creating is, but it's also work. But life is work. So life is work. But hopefully you can find work doing something that you find meaningful. Somebody's saying, "Oh man, that is how I smooth concrete bollard tops." Oh, interesting. With plastic and concrete. I'm getting interested in making sculptures too. Have you ever tried making a painting, but with sculpture, like a 3D painting? I've done, what do you call them? Bas relief sculptures or low relief sculptures that that have turned out that I like. I like that, and that's a valid method. And those are actually, I'd say, those are a good place to start because it's a little bit easier to market something that can be hung up on the wall than it is to market something that can't, because people have more wall space for pictures and things than they do have flat surfaces to put a sculpture on top of. So low relief sculptures are a great way to create something that's easy to mold and cast because you just pour silicone over the top. And then they're also a little bit easier to market and sell, and you can sell them for a little bit cheaper because it doesn't require a lot of material for the casting. And so, yeah, that's maybe something I need to look into doing more. Let's see, we'll say that we'll add in the swimsuit that's we're saying yes, you just put the plastic over the wet concrete and it makes a perfectly slick dome. Oh, interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, there's a bunch of tricks of the trade that you find out as you're doing things, ways to make things easier. Texturing, there's a lot of tricks to those. Or there's a lot of tricks to texturing, not to those. I like your type of art, and you are awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Gonna go sleep now. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Well, you too. Rest well. I want to sell 3D paintings. I can't find your video. I want to see that 3D painting. I can't find your video on it. Can you say when you did publish that video? I think it might be on the Proco channel. So if you look up on the Proco 3D channel, bas relief or low relief sculpture, BAS, bas relief is what it looks like. Then it might show up there. I don't know. It's been a while though since I've done those sculptures. I think I've done one on my channel as well. So you could look on my channel and see. It's maybe just it might just be a time lapse of the process, but you could get some information from that. Let's go ahead and add in this swimsuit or whatever that, what would you call this? It's going around the chest area. I've actually found a lot of similarities between sculpting and concrete and drywall. Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to redo the drywall in a lot of the areas of this old house that we purchased. So I need to, like, what do you call it? Float the drywall, where you're trying to smooth everything out. And there is, there's techniques that are very similar to it, and it is kind of its own type of sculpting, you could say. And I'd like to do a sculpture using the plaster, the drywall plaster, to do a large low relief sculpture with that, just to experiment and have some fun. So you might consider doing that if that's something you work with a lot, and use the tools that you use for plastering. That's something I could see being a interesting piece of content and an interesting sculpture if done well, depending on the subject and things like that. Just you made an Egypt arts. I don't know what you mean by that. Have I made Egyptian art? I don't know. I don't think I have. I haven't done that too much. Somebody's asking. You mentioned asking the internet for free. An intern for free, like shadow program. This would probably be extremely costly once you factor in the accommodations and commuting. Any advice? Also, any advice to reach out and ask an artist? Yeah, so you probably want to save up just like you would do for school. Like if you're gonna work, or if you're gonna go to school, you also have to think about those accommodations and things. And so I would recommend saving up a couple, maybe even just a month's worth of expenses, and then you just let them know, hey, I'll work for free. I've already worked out where I'm staying and everything. I just want to shadow you and learn from you, and I'm really serious about it, and I'll work really hard. I'll help with all the things you don't want to do as an artist, and can I just come and learn from you? And some artists, a lot of artists might say no, but you might get one that says, yeah, you can come and learn from me for a little bit and work with me. And I think a lot of artists want to be able to share that. You could also approach them if you're somebody that has, if you're somebody who's on social media and you have some expertise, you could say, hey, let me come and film the process and create content around your process. And then you get to shadow them maybe just for a couple days, and that's maybe a cheaper thing. But if you can do that, that's something that I've kind of done a little bit with Leroy Transfield, who's a sculptor I really admire. And I helped him build a little master demo for Proco. But it was also a chance for me to go and learn from somebody that I really respect and admire and think is one of the great sculptors of our time. And so I was able to do that without spending a lot of money. In fact, he was, he paid me for the work I was doing for video editing and creating the course, and then he gets the money for the sales of that course. And so it benefited him because now he has an online product that he can sell and make a little bit of income on the side. And it benefited me because I learned and I got some money for helping, and then I also was able to learn. So those types of win-win scenarios where you have to be tactful about it, and you have to be able to show that you're serious and that you're not a what should I say, that you're not a weirdo, or they won't regret letting, because it is, it's their space as an artist, so you're going into their space, and so that's something that you have to consider. And they might even say, you know what, I charge, I do workshops, and so you'd have to pay and be a part of the workshop. But even if they say that, I'd say, like, try to save up for those workshops. But there's going to be a price, but it'll certainly be less, even if you had to pay all of the expenses and maybe even pay them to let you be there and help and shadow them for a little bit. It's almost certainly going to be less than college, because college has just become outrageously expensive, and it'll almost certainly give you more information, especially if that person is doing what you want to do as an artist. If they already are making a living in the way that you would like to make a living. So yeah, there's going to be obstacles, there's going to be tricky things about it, but I'd say just try to find a way around those obstacles, and people might be willing to share the information that they have, to share their knowledge and maybe some of their connections and things like that. Bas relief, magnificent. Yeah, bas relief is really fun. I started with drywall mud because it's what I had. If I lived nearby, I would offer to trade drywall work for lessons. Yeah, that would be great, because we're doing a bunch of drywall, and it gets old pretty fast. And I'm not a expert. I'm just kind of learning everything as a homeowner, so it's all new to me. Figuring out how to fix shiplap drywall, which is what we have. Which is before they had drywall, they would just put sheets, or put like wood nailed into the wall, strips of wood, and then they would put plaster and push the plaster into that wood so that it grabs on. And it's kind of tricky because sometimes the plaster breaks and you have to replace areas, and it's a tricky thing. But it's good. It's good hard. It's good wholesome work. It's worth. It makes the house better, so I like that about it. And it's not super complicated. It's not like I've also had to do some plumbing and a little bit of electrical with the shop that I'm working on and things like that. And those things can be a little bit more complicated. But that's just part of home ownership. If you don't have the money to hire somebody to fix it, you just got to figure it out. Yeah, lath and plaster. Lath and plaster. What did I say? Lap and plaster? I might have pronounced it. Lath. It's pronounced Lathe. Lath and plaster. I've been working on homes for 25 years. If you ever need advice, feel free. Well, that's great to know. That's great to know. I'll be sure to reach out if I need anything. Though usually I just look it up on YouTube, and that's my homeowner education on figuring things out. But yeah, it's always good to have somebody that's willing to give advice, keep you from making a costly mistake. I've made a couple of those that have, you know, when you make a mistake and then somebody has to come and fix it, you pay for it. You pay for it. So it's a learning experience. Somebody says that's a tongue twister. The lath and plaster. Yeah, lath and plaster. Since I started clay sculpting, I have to keep filing down my fingernails every other day. Yeah, yeah, the fingernails can get in the way. Though you can use them as tools if you know, if you want. But yeah, I try to keep them short because then, you know, then you get clay in your fingernails and then they look dirty even if it's just clay, but they look all gross if you have them too long. I should think about that more because I'm, you know, sculpting on camera in 4K while recording. I guess the live streams aren't, you can't really see the details, but sometimes I forget that if there's any, like especially if you have dark clays, you get like black clay in your fingernails and it just looks super nasty. See, somebody's talking, says that's true, everything's on YouTube now, talking about that you can just look up videos on fixing your house and everything. Yeah, YouTube's a great resource. And I've heard from people, they're like, you know, trying to fix their like plumbing when a pipe breaks and there's water leaking and they have like a renter down below and they're trying to fix the plumbing and they don't have any experience and there's no resource to learn and they don't have any money to hire somebody, so they have to figure it out. It's just like, yeah, that's stressful. But now we're so information rich, so we just have to, but that information comes at the cost of having to sift through the information and find the best, you know, because you can find good and bad information on any topic that you can imagine. So just going through and finding the good stuff. But generally, you know, you look at the comments of almost anything and people are pretty on top of it. If you get something wrong, people will jump all over that because we love telling people when they're wrong. So in general, the best information seems to float to the top. Yeah, it looks disgusting in my fingernails because the clay is dark gray. Yeah, gotta keep your fingernails short to avoid the stigma of having gross fingernails. Hey Andrew, I just wanted to share that I made 2 armatures today using the method I learned from you. Thank you for the great tips. They've been so helpful. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that you're building and being creative. That's the trick, is just being disciplined and just doing it. You know, there's nothing I can do to make you sculpt. You just have to find the time and do it. Even if you get the courses and you watch the videos, but if you don't just spend the time and discipline, forcing yourself to sculpt, then it's not gonna be very helpful. So that is great to hear. Great to hear. And if you're interested in sharing your work, you can create a free account over at Proko.com, and underneath the video assignments, you can upload images of your work to share it. And I every once in a while I go through and try to give feedback on people that do that. So if you're interested, there's also that resource. Let's see, I feel like this knee feels a little short. Gonna lengthen it just a little bit by adding clay to the top of it right here. And it's also kind of a little bit straighter than what I have, so I'm gonna take a tool and just remove a little bit of clay right here. I'll try to flatten this a little bit, and I'll come around and smooth that out. Something like that. Do you use armatures often? Yeah, almost with every sculpture I'll use an armature, similar to this guy back here. So I almost always have an internal armature. If I'm using oil-based clay, then I will. The only reason I wouldn't is if I was using natural clay that was going to be fired, and then I would have to figure another support system out. But for what I do and for my style and for my demos and everything, I really like an armature because it gives you an internal measuring system, so you know where all of the joints of the body are going to be before you start sculpting, and that's just really convenient. It's really it really makes the process a lot easier to be able to judge things off of those landmarks. And you still have to, you still have to know what you're doing, but having those in place is really helpful. And so that's why I recommend learning to build wire armatures and then building it. And if you're interested in like all the free lessons and having an assignment PDF, a free assignment PDF for the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course, there's if you go to all my links, or the link that says all my links, and down to the PDF, there's one for the portrait sculpting course and one for the figure sculpting course, and it's free, and it has the links to all of the free lessons, and you can just check it off like an assignment. So you watch the video lesson, do the sculpture, and then check it off, and then go to the next one. And that's a great place to start if you're wanting to learn sculpting, but you don't know where to start, or you don't know like what assignments that you should be working on or anything like that. That I created that free PDF just for that. It also has links to the premium stuff, but if you're not ready to join the full course, then you can just take advantage of all of the free lessons. And I think it's like basically every other lesson and is free. So there's a lot of free content. I wanted to provide a lot because I was an artist learning from YouTube videos, and so it was important for Proko as well as for me to create a lot of free content that was valuable and interesting and informative, because I do want to share with as many people as possible. And it's understandable. Not everybody has the exposable income to spend on a $150 course or whatever the course ends up being. But, if you have a couple hours a day and you're willing to invest the time and energy to learn, then there's those free resources for you. So I hope you'll look into those and take advantage of them if you're interested. see, this is coming along. It's looking a little bit better than when I started, so that's good. That's always a good thing. Changing the angle like I'm doing here, where I'm holding it in my hand and looking at it from different angles. Just you can see the forms and notice things a little bit better when you're constantly changing the angle up. And some parts of the body are just easier to understand from certain viewpoints, and I want to make sure that I'm capturing the correct gesture from each angle. So that's why I like having a firmer clay, so that I can hold it, move it around like this without messing up all the details. And so that's one of the reasons that I use a firmer clay for these studies. Chavant medium mixed with just a little bit of hard, because it does make it a little bit easier. Let's see. Feel like this foot is a little bit large compared to the other one. Okay, we're just about at an hour, so I think I'm gonna pause it for now. So here's a look at that final sculpture, what it's looking like after, I think this is my third session working on this sculpture. So after about 3 hours of sculpting, this is what it's looking like. Sculpting takes time. It takes time to develop, but this is a great size to work with. This is about 12 inches or 30 centimeters, somewhere in there. And a great size to work with. If you're interested in sculpting, I hope you'll check out those free PDFs that have the assignment checklist for the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course. If you go to there's links for those PDFs in the video description, and if you go to all my links, then I keep those updated. And there's also my ebooks, an artist X-ray vision on the male figure and on the female figure. Those are great resources, and just $10 for those, and it helps me out for anybody that purchases. I really appreciate it because it helps support the channel. I'm also going to be getting some, I'll also be doing some like a subscription-based thing, and getting some private groups going to hopefully build this community of people interested in sculpting. Also, my in-person workshops are going to be coming up. So if you're interested in traveling to Iowa and sculpting with me in my home studio, then reach out to me and let me know that you're interested. Reach out to me. The easiest way is through Instagram and say, hey, I'm interested in the in-person workshops. So add me to the list of people to be notified once those are set, and once those get going. And that should be starting. That should be going in the summer, so I'm excited for those. It'll be great to meet some of you guys and sculpt with you. I think that'll be really fun. Stay creative, stay productive. I'll hopefully see you again soon in another sculpting video or drawing video that I'm trying to do daily. So today's Friday, so the last one for this week, but hopefully I'll catch you guys on Monday. And see you guys around. Thanks for watching.